Hello and welcome to this special migraine edition of the podcast, which will be mercifully short because this intractable headache I have makes it very difficult for me to string a coherent sentence together. Anyway, what I have done today is collate a list of questions that I get asked somewhat regularly by people on my email list, which you can subscribe to, by the way, by going to the link that's on the screen, philtyreman.co.uk/report, and plonking in your details. You get a bribe, the form of my free report, How to Build Muscle and Strength the Natural Way, when you do, and you get emailed every day. Happy days. But yeah, so people on my email list, they ask me the questions, and people on social media, specifically LinkedIn. So that is the introduction out of the way. First question is, how many days per week should I train? Well, the answer to that question is that there's no real there's no one size fits all answer to this, and we need to attack the question systematically as well. Because what do you mean by how many days per week should I train? Really, we need to look at how many sessions of training should I be doing, and what should those sessions consist of. So to cut what could be a potentially a very long answer short, because there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to do it justice in my current state. I'm just going to say this. For the average person who works hard, has family, all that other good stuff, I don't think you really want to be lifting weights more than 2 or 3 times per week, 2 or 3 days per week, so 2 or 3 sessions per week, because I just think it is too demanding. There are obviously exceptions to this, but again, we're talking broad strokes, average person, 2, maybe 3 weightlifting sessions per week. And you want to supplement that with 2 or 3 hard conditioning sessions per week. I define hard conditioning as anything that gets you kind of hot and sweaty, so sprints, runs, short and fast runs, short and fast cycle rides, that sort of thing. So you want to do 2 or 3 sessions of that per week. Now, that could mean that you only train 2 days per week. So if you do both your conditioning and your lifting on the same day, that could potentially be a 2-day per week complete training program. I wouldn't recommend that. I think it's too demanding. I think you want to spread things out throughout the week. But you could potentially do that if you are time poor, because it's better to do something that is, oh, I'm just too busy to train and not bother. But as I say, it's better to spread that out. So maybe lift on a Tuesday and a Thursday, do your hard conditioning on a Monday and a Wednesday, or a Monday and a Friday, something like that. Loads of different permutations. If you're lifting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you could do your conditioning Tuesday and Thursday. You get the idea. So days per week you could train is the wrong question, really. It's how many sessions per week do you want to be doing? And as I say, 2 or 3 lifting sessions and 2 or 3 hard conditioning sessions for the typical average person who just wants to be strong and in shape, so they don't die prematurely from some otherwise preventable disease. Good. Question 2. If steroids are as widespread as you say they are, why don't we hear about them more in the news? Well, that's a really easy one to answer. It's because they're illegal drugs. And people don't readily admit to taking illegal drugs. Now, I know in the UK, the attitude towards anabolic steroids by the police and the courts is a very lax one. I think this is wrong, profoundly wrong, but hey, that's just the way it is. Not so much over in the United States, insofar as I understand it, where even simple possession of these things carries pretty hefty prison sentences in certain jurisdictions. I'm not familiar with the law elsewhere in the world, but I know really we're looking at fitness content that people are consuming, fitness news and things. Most of it comes out of the US and the UK. But even then, as I say, they're still illegal drugs and people don't want to admit to taking them. And even in the UK, for example, where perhaps people aren't so much scared of the police, even though they should be because they are still illegal drugs, they don't want to lose lucrative sponsorship deals that they require to keep themselves fed and housed. So, okay, so you got yourself a typical fitness influencer who makes their money by posting YouTube shorts and other crappy content onto the internet. and they're sponsored by major supplement brands, major clothing brands, that sort of thing. If they come out and admit openly that they take steroids, then the chances are that they're going to lose those sponsorship deals, and they're going to therefore not be able to continue, posting content, making content for a living. Athletes, athletes as well. Like, I found this out recently that even the world's strongest man is quote unquote a drug tested competition. I found this out the other week. So even these big world's strongest man competitors, if they come out and openly admit to currently abusing anabolic steroids, then and other PEDs, then well, potentially that's going to have massive ramifications on their ability to compete in those competitions. So yes, and the last point to touch on that's worth touching on is actors as well. A lot of the transformations that you see, I suspect, potentially have a little bit of vitamin steroid involved. Can't prove it because nobody admits to these things, but it's my suspicion. And again, if they come out as having taken these drugs, then that's going to have potentially massive ramifications on their career. So that's why uh, that's why they're not. That's why it's just not talked about. Again, in my opinion, which I think is the correct opinion to have. Good. Okay, question 3. Why do you recommend so much cardio, even for skinny guys who want to grow? Simple answer to that is that most people are not as fit as they think they are, even skinny guys. And when they start training, or even if they've been training for a while, if they've just been doing lifting, their heart and lungs are woefully, woefully lacking. And believe it or not, one of the best ways to make your weightlifting, your resistance training more effective is to have better cardiovascular fitness, because that will enable you to take less rest, less rest between sets. If you take less rest between sets, you can increase your training density. Now, training density is the amount of work you do in a set period of time, and that is one of the most potent stimulants to muscle growth. So that's the first reason, which is probably the reason people are most interested in. The other reason is that good heart and lung health is the thing that stops you having heart attacks and strokes, really. You don't want to be that guy who can squat a load of weight, but then if he has to, I don't know, try and play around a football with his son in the park, and he's blowing out of his arse. He's after give a little 5-10 minutes of doing that. You don't want to be that guy, and I see that a lot in lifters particularly. They think they're much fitter than they are, and then you put the mildest of cardiovascular strain on them, and they really start to struggle. I remember once actually, I went for a friend of mine. He's in great shape, or he was. This is going back a few years now, and lifted a lot of weights. And we went for a walk, just town, went for a walk to town. And where I lived was very hilly, and it was funny watching him get really out of breath when we were walking up a hill. This is a guy who walks around with abs, was walking around with abs year round, and big, nice big muscles, and he was struggling with the slight incline of a hill. Hell, I've been that guy. More to the point, I've been that guy. I know what it's like to be really strong and have big muscles, and not even not be particularly fat. Be very lean at one point, and really, really struggle with even the most basic of cardiovascular tasks. It's not a great way to live. It really isn't, and that is why I'm a big evangelist for hard conditioning work, particularly, but also gentle conditioning, like walking every day without fail. 45 minutes, if not an hour. Okay, if that's too long, half an hour. Start with half an hour, but whatever. Just you need to be walking every day if you can. Good. That's question 3 out of the way. Question 4. Why do you recommend stretching? Didn't you know it's outdated? Yes, I am aware that basic static stretching, specifically before a workout, the evidence for that suggests or even says that it reduces peak force output. So it's a lot of personal trainers, exercise scientists and things will recommend people don't stretch before a workout. Now, see, I do with my clients. I recommend basic static stretching before workouts, even though I'm fully aware that it's going to reduce peak force output. The reason for that's very simple. I don't work with athletes or advanced trainees who need to produce peak force output during the training sessions. I work with Joe and Jill, rarely Jill, but mainly Joe, average, who just wants to be stronger, bigger muscles, more in shape for not only their own sake, but the sake of their family independence, clients, employees, the drill. And these people don't need to be hitting peak force output during their sessions. And we also need to consider their general state of fitness, similar to the conditioning question here. And most normal people whose lives don't revolve around fitness, they're really, really tight, because they spend a lot of time sitting, sitting at desk working, driving a car, even like things like talking on the phone up to the ear and things. All of that really tightens up the muscles, and that has a detrimental effect on their ability to actually perform basic movement patterns, things like squats, presses, pulls, with good form without do something like, I don't know, so take a deadlift for example. If you've got like really, really, really tight hamstrings to the point that you can't get into the starting position for a deadlift correctly, see what's going to happen is that your like your lower back's going to have to round over for you to actually be able to grab the bar. That's something that you see. People who have really, really, really tight shoulders, when they overhead press, they can't actually get the bar into the correct position over their head. Normally ends up slightly in front of the body, which isn't what we want. So that's why I'm a big fan of stretching. The other thing too that isn't considered by a lot of these boffins is that the typical average person does their exercise in essentially one flurry of activity on their training day. There'll be a flurry of activity, and then the rest of the day they're pretty sedentary. And there's very, very little they can do to change that. Yes, you could turn around to them and say, oh, well, you need to stand up, you need to go for walks, and you need to stretch at your desk and all that other stuff. People don't have the time or the inclination, or even the opportunity in some cases, to actually do that as part of their job, or they're just not. Their environment just isn't conducive to that happening. So the alternative would be for them not to train at all, but we want them to train. So the fact is that they are going to have all of their activity clustered together, and the rest of the day they're spent very sedentary, getting tighter, tighter, tighter. And that's why I recommend they stretch, to just kind of reverse some of that process and make sure that when they are attacking the lifts, they're able to execute them with safe form, a good, nice full range of motion. And people who are really, really, really struggling, I would recommend go and see either, like on this tightness thing, I'd recommend they go and see a physiotherapist. By physiotherapist, I mean a proper physiotherapist, someone who's registered with the Health and Care Professions Council. I'm wary of personal trainers who operate in this space around, like, tightness and mobility, mobility dysfunction. Uh, it's too medically adjacent for my taste, so I would always recommend clients would go and see physio who can properly diagnose the underlying issue and then prescribe the appropriate treatment to relieve that kind of severe tightness, if it's not relieved by kind of the basic static stretches that you learnt in school. If that's not sufficient, and physiotherapist is spare, in my opinion. You may have a different opinion. You're not my client, you're not my responsibility, so you go and do what you want. But that's what I suggest people who work with me do. Just as a side note before I close off, I am a stickler for that. Sending people to doctors, physios in the first instance. I actually had a question from a new client this week, no, maybe last week. I don't know. It was recently. My memory's gone because of this migraine. But he said that he was really struggling with some acute tightness in the neck, and he said, Phil, what do you recommend that I do? And I was just like, don't know. If it hurts, don't do it. Get yourself down to a physio who has the requisite knowledge, skills to diagnose the underlying issue and then prescribe you an appropriate course of action to relieve this problem. I'm not gonna, I've not got the knowledge or the, even the setup that I have because everything's remote. I can't diagnose the underlying cause of tightness like that. You need you need hands-on examination by an appropriately qualified professional, right? And because otherwise you're just kind of putting your finger in the wind. Or I think it could be that. Who knows? I'll tell you who knows. A physio knows. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this up now because I am rambling really badly because this head is just my head's gone. My head's gone today. Migraines do that to me. They affect my ability to speak. So I can think with perfect clarity, but my ability to get those thoughts in my head to come out via my tongue, my mouth, is rather severely impacted. So yeah, that's all I got today. Thank you very much, and I shall see you next week. In the meantime, if you want to support my very, very small channel, please hit subscribe. Genuinely, it helps me out. I don't know if you can mute it after you subscribed or whatever, but just help me get the numbers up. Like the video if you like the video, and of course, go avail yourself of the free report and the subsequent emails that follow it, where I expound upon topics like what I've discussed today at length on a daily basis. So there we are. All right, thank you. Goodbye.